of the JB Media Institute. Thanks. I'm the co-founder and lead instructor of the JB Media Institute, and we are a training company based out of West Asheville. I'm also the president of Creative Original Incorporated, which is a search engine optimization and website design company. So for the last 20 years, I've been building websites and managing websites, promoting websites, but also in that same time frame, I've been doing everything else under the sun. So everything from email marketing to blogging to all forms of digital advertising. I've used about 45 different social media platforms, and I've really spent a lot of time digging into how we really tell stories as businesses, as professionals, as companies and organizations, and how we can really use digital communications to enhance that. So today's topic is one of my favorites, and I want to start by just talking about a few questions and hearing from you all a little bit about, what your perception is of websites in general. The reason I wanted to start with this conversation first is because today's class, which is about how we can create a great online presence without a website, I don't want that to take away from the importance of websites, and for us to take a few minutes just to talk about, how we can really think about websites and incorporate them into our business planning over time. So my first question, and I want everyone to feel comfortable, just, put your hand up or just unmute and jump into the conversation. But I'm curious to know how many people here have a website or don't have a website at all. Has anybody actually built one yet at all?
Meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So for that provider analysis, they were at 7.8.
Hold on one second.
And as of right now.
All right, so just a reminder to everybody, if you can make sure you're muted, just so background noise doesn't come through, that'd be great. But yeah, so we've got a few people that basically have websites. Feel free to drop in the chat if you have one as well. I see George and Maddie both have one. And everybody else, I'm assuming, does not have a website, correct? You haven't started that process yet. So I'm curious to know, for those of you, great. I see Vianney's got one. Jen's currently building one. So I'm curious to know, what do you all think, why are websites important? What is the value of a website for your business? Like, why do they say companies have to have one?
I think it's a credibility thing in my industry to have a website. I don't feel like I absolutely need one, but I feel like it gives a person a place to land if they're looking for me.
Yes. No, that's great. There's a credibility factor. Anybody else, especially those of you who are maybe building a website or have built one? Why? What was the impetus there?
It helps you communicate with your customers better. You can tell them what you're offering and how to contact you and stuff like that.
Exactly. And I see in the comments, we've got some great feedback in there too. And Katie, thanks for sharing your website. Feel free, if you have one, to share it today, so they can find you easier. Websites are sort of the first impression that you make a lot of times with people. That's a great point. Consumers have another side of information about the company. So again, they can learn more about who you are, what you do, and why. Yeah, and George, I see your comments. Easier access to information if you have a website, but it's a double-edged sword because it can create a professional appearance, or it can create a less professional appearance, depending on how it's done. Exactly. And Lori, yeah, I love that. It legitimizes your brand in some ways. Great. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is all of these are actually, completely valid comments, and definitely part of the reason that websites are important for businesses. I think because I've worked with so many small businesses and people that are just starting out, the biggest thing that I like to explain to them is that the reason eventually any company or organization, or even if you're an individual brand, you want to have a website is because it becomes your real estate on the web, right? So I can use the different tools that we're going to talk about today, but one of the sort of cons of using third-party tools to represent yourself on the internet is that essentially you don't really own that real estate, right? You are kind of borrowing that space, leasing that space in some way. If you're paying for MailChimp, in some ways, you're kind of like paying rent for that space in the email newsletter world. If you're on Facebook, it might be free to have your page, but now you are kind of beholden to Facebook, right? Same with Instagram, LinkedIn. We'll talk about tools like Canva, Venmo, all these different business building tools. And a lot of them, although they're super useful, we then become kind of at the mercy of those companies. Whereas when I have a website, I'm usually typically paying for that space on the server. I'm paying for my domain. And then whether I build it myself or I hire somebody, it really becomes where our company gets to sort of have more freedom, right? We get to have a little more control over what we're doing. And of course, that's dependent on choosing the right platform and maybe making sure that you choose the right designer to work with you. So I think one of the things about websites that people sometimes don't do is spend enough time really learning about the platforms, how websites are built, and then really interviewing enough designers so that you choose the person who's really a good fit. So I do think websites are important. I just want to make sure that we really know this class isn't meant to necessarily replace a website, or for those of you who are building one or have built one, for you to feel like you shouldn't do that. It's more, how can we think in business stages? How can we think in different growth phases about our business and invest our time and money in a website when it makes the most sense, right? Sometimes we don't want to jump the gun and move too quick because we're not financially prepared. Sometimes we really need to just build the business, get our products and services into a more clear place before we can even build a website that's going to do a really good job. So it's really about making sure that we make that leap when it's the most valuable. And hey, good morning, Julie. Thanks for joining us. Saw your comments in there, so thanks for being here. So I'm curious, when you think about websites, what comes to mind? What do you think about? And again, feel free to jump in. Is it stressful? Is it fun? Do you think about the writing? Do you think about the pictures? I'm a web designer, so I have lots of things that I think about, but I'm curious for you all, what do you think of when you think of websites?
I think less is more sometimes on the content that you put out there. And I think all of the things you just talked about, the writing, making sure it's succinct is really helpful, making sure you have good images and that it works well on a mobile device, and then I haven't jumped into this, but how do I make it better accessible to someone who might have some kind of ableism issue with how they can read or hear or whatever the content? I haven't jumped into that, but that's something I'm thinking about too.
Yeah, and I'll just say less is more. Thank you for saying that. That's one of my biggest mantras as a web designer. Julie, I see your hands raised. Did you want to share something?
Sorry, I keep forgetting that I have a double mute. Okay.
Oh, no problem.
When I think of, good morning, when I think of websites, I honestly think of, especially in contemporary times, algorithms and views. See, of course, nowadays is more about how many hits did you get, how many this, how many that, how far did you get yourself out there? Because of course, when you have views, of course, the person viewing will then communicate, whether, word of mouth or American Sign Language or however they decide to do it, on what they found, if it's beneficial for another person. So that's what I think of.
And Katie, I see you think about the visual aspects, the images and the layouts first. Yeah, design is such a big part of the process, right? So I feel like that's what a lot of people think of. Anybody else? Websites kind of something that jumps out of you, or that you associate with websites?
Well, right now I'm working on the background stuff, I guess you would say, like the metadata and things like that on the website, and it's really throwing me for a loop because it's not something I'm used to. The design portion and writing everything was pretty easy, but now I have to work on the technical aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest leaps. For those of you who joined a little bit later, I've been building websites for 20 years, and I've taught some classes for like other web design people to basically say, hey, I want to encourage you that you really educate your clients, that you build that into the process. Because a lot of times when people are working with me, they have no baseline understanding of what it takes to build a website. So it's really important for me to be a good communicator. I don't know about all of you, but I'll be honest in talking smack about my own industry. We are historically not good at explaining what we're doing, or sometimes even answering an email, right? So it's really, I've really encouraged other people that do the same work I do, that we have to think of ourselves as educators, even if we don't like it, because people are paying us for something. And it's really important that we explain to you what you're paying for, what the value is. And for those of you that are, there's sort of two ways of building a website. One is do it yourself, right? So figuring out how to design and build a website on your own. And there's a lot of tools for doing that. And then the other sort of way of doing it is hiring somebody to help you. But I think in both of those scenarios, as the business owner, as the leader of the brand, you actually still have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. You have to know what kind of questions to ask the designer. You have to sort of understand the process of building a website. And so, a lot of times I know we'd love to just wash our hands of it and have other things to do, right? So we don't want to have to spend our time. But I really encourage everyone, it's really important to hire, especially a designer, if you do that route, somebody you feel is really going to communicate with you and listen to you and is not going to get frustrated when you're asking questions about what they're doing and why they're doing it, that they're going to be comfortable really saying, here's why we make the decisions, right? So one of my favorite things when I work with website clients is I always tell them at the beginning, hey, there's going to be parts of the process where I say no to your ideas, but I don't say no to the ideas because I just want to be, negative. I say it because I've been building them for 20 years. And so there's reasons why we make certain decisions, but I feel it's really important for me to communicate that in the process. So anybody else have any other feedback? Again, what do you know about websites? What do they bring to mind? Again, you can hop in the chat or just unmute if you'd like to. All right, so the last thing I just wanted to say about websites is a lot of people ask me, how do I know that I'm ready to build a website? And we're going to talk a little bit about this in more detail, but like I said, I think it's very important that if you took nothing else away from today, to just realize that your business is going to happen in phases and it's going to grow over time and change over time. And what that really means is that the tools that you use, the way that you present yourself online, it's going to continue to adapt and change and evolve over and over and over. So I always remind people, when it comes to marketing yourself in 2023, it's not a static thing, right? It's not a one-time deal. It's not something where you can kind of just, do a thing and then move on. It's like, really, we're going to be involved in it forever. And even when we're delegating it, even when we're hiring other people, we still have to be involved, because at the end of the day, marketing is really just building relationships with your existing customers and with your potential customers. And I often remind people, none of us really have great relationships if we're not willing to commit and put in work and be a part of the process and actually like invest in the relationship. So that's where I often tell people, don't think of marketing as marketing. Sometimes marketing, I would like to just throw that word away if it was up to me, actually, after 20 years. And just say it's about relationships with your customers. So if that's all it is, then building your website and doing any of the other things that we talk about today, that it's the most important thing that you do. And not only is it the most important thing that you do, I would hope that you love it, right? That you love the relationships that you're building with your customers, that you love the process of getting to know them, and that you feel like it's really worth your energy and your time rather than kind of being a burden. And so that's why, like I said, we really want to think of our businesses and how we build our online presence and how we market and communicate and connect with people as just this process. It's organic, it grows alongside of us, it grows alongside of hopefully our bank accounts, it grows alongside of our customer base. And it's something that's just, it's not going to stay the same. We're going to keep learning, we're going to keep connecting, we're going to keep listening. And that's going to help us really take ourselves to the next level And that's going to happen over and over and over as we move forward. So I've really been feeling this lately because I hit my 20 years in business in May of 2023. I started my first company in 2003. And I've just really started to see how that organic experience that you have, you really want to be prepared that you don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to do what everybody else tells you. It's really about what is your process? How are you working through that process? And how are you always sort of moving forward, right? And that's, I think, a lot of the baseline of what I'm going to share today about how you can do this while you're building your website, before you're building your website, and even how once your website is up, you can still be thinking about how these other things that are around your website are now part of the plan, right? They're part of the bigger picture. So this is where I think in marketing, we talk a lot about holistically looking at our online presence and seeing how it's all interconnected, right? So I always used to tell people when I started in social media, yeah, I felt like social media became like a redheaded stepchild. So we would all like think about all of the marketing and then they'd be like, oh yeah, I've got to do the social media. Oh yeah, I've got to do this thing over here. I'm like, let's pull it all together. Let's bring it all together so that we can see that we're creating a presence on the internet that is really cohesive and clear. So I know we've had a few people join. I just want to welcome you. I'm Sarah Benoit. I'm super glad you're here. And we're going to be talking about how you can really market yourself without a website. And as we go along, again, we'll take a break at the top of the hour. And I really want to encourage folks to come on camera if you can and talk with us. Feel like you can jump in and have conversations today and ask questions, because I am a big fan of really talking out things as we go along. And we are going to have some really fun time today, I think, to look at live tools. I'm going to show you some examples of the tools that I recommend for a variety of my micro enterprise clients, my small business clients, who again might be in that startup phase, or maybe they're redesigning their website. And we're just figuring out how we can make sure that we keep everything online really strong, vibrant, exciting, and attracting people, regardless of what part of our process that we're in. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slide deck. And again, for all of you who weren't here at the beginning, I will be sharing this slide deck. So don't feel like you have to write everything down today. A lot of things are in the deck. You'll get the PDF. I know that they are also recording this, so you'll be able to go back over and listen to it as well if you want to go back over some of the things that I share. So again, I often encourage people, because we're going to talk about a lot of different things, to listen, ask questions. And when there's something that you feel gets you excited, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. Oh, that tool looks fun. Oh, I feel like I could really understand what Sarah was talking about. Make note of those things, because in all of the small businesses that I've worked with, I think one of the best things that you can do, honestly, is figure out where you get the most excited, where you have the most passion when it comes to communicating your story and about your brand, and really put your energy there in the beginning. And I think eventually you figure out too, where you want to invest yourself in different parts of the marketing and where you want to outsource it and get other people to do it, right? So as you kind of grow and change and evolve, you start to be like, here's where my time is best spent. And here's where it's better for me to get other people to assist, right? So some of the tools that we're going to talk about today fall into what I see as kind of 5 different categories that are outside of websites. So social media obviously is here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the most popular social media and what I think is super useful, whether you have a website or not. Online payment tools, a lot of times we don't talk about this in marketing classes as much, but in this day and age, I don't have to have a website to get money. I can set up a number of different payment systems and let people pay me at any time. And I was telling Dwayne earlier when I first got on the call, one of the things that really inspired me about this is I go to Puerto Rico quite a bit. And in Puerto Rico, if you've never been there, on the island, sometimes the wind blows and the internet disappears, right? So that's island life. It's not mainland life. You don't have as stable infrastructure when you're a tiny little piece of land in the middle of the ocean as you do when you're on a big continent. And the businesses there, what I found amazing is I could go to a concert And instead of buying tickets and going through that whole process, going to a website, buying a ticket, bringing my phone with the ticket on it, I would just go to the venue and they would get there, they'd tell me the price of the ticket and I would Venmo them the money. They would get the money instantly and then they would let me through the door. Right. And so in a world where cell data is a huge part of how they make sure that they can still run their businesses, they're using things like Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, that have kind of like an instant ability for somebody to pay for something right there in the moment. And I've seen a lot of that in different places where there's not as much Wi-Fi infrastructure. We're going to talk about email and domain accounts. I do think even before you have a website, it's very valuable to choose a .com or a domain, purchase that for the business, and then actually build emails on that domain, right? So you might not have a website where you're going to put the website on the domain yet, but you can still have the domain, own the domain. You can send people to it if you redirect it to one of your other tools, and you can have an official business email. I'm going to talk a little bit about email newsletters and where I see those fitting in to this promotional piece. And then creative tools, which is more of kind of an administrative piece. Creative tools though, like Canva or ChatGPT, there's different types of stock video and photography sites like Pexels and Unsplash. All of these different systems are going to help you when you are creating these other channels to really become more consistent in the way things look, to develop a stronger brand voice. And I will say I'm really excited because in about 2 weeks, I'm going to launch the first website that I've built so far, where I developed all of the content with ChatGPT. And I'm a writer, so I really believe in quality content. I don't think that artificial intelligence is going to replace creatives. If you've ever played with it, then you know whatever it spits out is very imperfect. It doesn't have the flavor that a person is going to give it when we're actually writing the content. But I was able to write an entire website in about a third of the time using that tool, which was amazing. And so I'm also using it for email newsletter content, social media content, to just help my process become more efficient. And I'm helping a lot of students learn how to use these tools for the same reason, right? So that if they're doing a lot of their own digital marketing, they have the ability to really save some time, but also still create something of real quality that really speaks to their brand. And so we'll talk a little bit about that stuff as well. But I think these kind of 5 buckets of tools really open up a lot of opportunities outside of your website, to really create, like I said, a strong presence that gets you in front of a ton of people. And Anne, I see your comment, your logo designer used a ChatGPT image program and it was really cool. So yeah, there's, I think when it comes to images and developing things, we still have a lot of questions there around how the AI is scraping the internet and pulling graphics and style and images from artists. So there's going to be a lot of conversation about that, I think, going forward. But when we look at how we can use it to write and edit, how we can use it to do research on our competition, how we can use it to, like heighten kind of the marketability of our content, or even as an SEO professional, how can you use it to better optimize what we're saying? That right there is really available to us out of the gate. And the system is already set up to not plagiarize, right? So it's already kind of protecting from different writers from plagiarism. It's not going to spit out something that's exactly what it's seen on the internet. And there's limitations to how much it can quote people or pull direct quotes from people. So keep that in mind if you're using any of these tools. If I say, write me an article where you quote this famous person, usually ChatGPT will write the article and then it'll give me a little note at the end that says none of these quotes are real. Right? So it's really telling you like, we can't really source quotes from people without actually talking to them, right? And so that's something where those safeguards are built in. I think we're going to see that coming down the pipeline for design elements as well, and visuals and stuff. So the other thing I wanted us to talk about before we jump into actual tools and sort of this process that I've been creating for different students so that they can really start working on getting their brand out there before their website is complete or before they have the budget to work on their website. I think these 5 kind of questions or brainstorming items are really important, right? So even if you're just starting out, you haven't hired a logo designer, you haven't hired a professional yet, you still have to think about the branding. And to me, branding isn't just a logo or a name. It's really how you want people to feel, right? That's the bottom line question. When people interact with my Facebook, when they talk to me on the phone, when they read my email newsletter, when they go and watch my YouTube, when they go and check out on PayPal, whatever it is, how do I want people to feel, right? What is the image that I'm creating? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it funny? Is it serious? Is it, are there certain values that you care about? Are there certain things, passions, beliefs that you want to connect with your existing and potential customers on? So a lot of times I tell people, really think about that before you're making visual decisions and decisions about languaging, because different words and different colors all have different emotions attached to them. And so that's something you can just Google. You can Google color psychology. You can Google different tips around how to write in the active voice for marketing and things like that. But this is where, some brands use slang. I definitely have a brand where, we speak very much like we talk. Even in our writing, that's something that I really like to do. I'm a technical person, but one of the parts of my image that I've created is that you don't have to be technical to understand me, right? And so I really like to make sure that everything I'm talking about is something that almost anybody can sort of follow and understand. It's also important to think about the consistency. So all the tools we're going to talk about, the one thing they all have in common is you have to use them regularly. Right? That's the one truth about marketing that's always going to be there. If you don't show up regularly and invest in the relationships you're trying to create, you're not going to get results. So posting on Facebook randomly when you get to it, writing an email newsletter whenever you have time. It's not that those things are wrong, but they are not really a way to create results, right? When you're doing it sort of randomly without a schedule, without a real process, you're just kind of throwing things out there and hoping something happens. Whereas when we actually create schedules, we have plans and strategies, and we have content coming out regularly. Even if we just say in the first 3 months or 6 months of a business, here's one major marketing thing I'm going to do each month till we get everything set up. And then here's where we start our regular kind of content marketing strategy, right? And we start putting content out on different channels and reaching out to people. So you really have to commit to the process. I really think it's important to be realistic. If you only have 1 hour a week, then that's all you have. And do whatever you can with that hour, right? If you've got 3 hours a week, great. If you've got 5 hours every other week, that's great. But put it into your workflow. Make marketing yourself, communicating with your customers, make that something that becomes part of your weekly schedule and that is built in so that you have that time set aside. I also think, just as a side note, when it comes to consistency, that, a lot of what happens when you become more consistent with digital marketing and with the tools that we're using, one, you start clicking around more regularly, which means you start to memorize it more. And so every time you use the tool, if you're doing it every single week, after 3 months, 6 months, you're starting to feel like you really know where you're going and what you're doing. And so at the end of the day, consistency also becomes a confidence builder. And not only with the technical tools do you feel more confident, but with your own brand and message and this idea of how you want to make people feel. The more that you engage with it, the more that you talk about it, the more that you present yourself a certain way, the more strength and confidence you have in the brand that you're creating. Those things are going to make marketing a lot easier, right? The more comfortable you are with yourself, what you represent, what you want to say, who you're trying to connect with, then the easier and faster you're going to get at just doing the marketing in general. I'm sure many of you have already thought about your audiences. Maybe you've done customer avatars. Maybe you've done different personas of who your markets might be. The question really is, who do you serve, right? So different channels have different levels of power when it comes to different audiences. We'll talk about that again in a little more detail. But a good example that we'll touch on is the difference between Facebook and Instagram, right? Facebook and Instagram have a lot in common, but they actually really do tap into different markets as their prominent community members. And so, you don't have to be on Instagram and you don't have to be on Facebook. I defy that that's the truth. You can be on Facebook and you can be on Instagram, you can be on both. But to me, it's really important to ask, why am I there and who am I trying to connect with on those platforms? So you don't want to just do it because everybody told you to do it. You want to do it, one, because you think there's actually people there that are the right people for you. And two, in my mind, you do it because you enjoy it, right? Because you want to be a part of that community, right? So if there was another thing that was like kind of really integral, I think everybody should remember is you don't actually have to use any tool, right? You'll hear the hype about digital tools all the time, but there's no like digital marketing police that come and make sure you're on Instagram and make sure you're on YouTube. The only thing that we all have to do is we actually have to get in front of potential customers. So I don't actually care how you do it. If you just love email and that's the way that you want to reach people, build a great list, be consistent, and get a really good following. And that list might actually produce customers, right? A lot of times I feel like people get caught up in the hype. They end up with like 17 different channels, and then nothing is actually getting your full attention. Nothing's actually getting a real investment. So you're not getting results anywhere because you're spread too thin. And so I would rather you did one or two things really well and committed to it and got a result than to try to do 10 things and then just felt overwhelmed and constantly kind of gave up and procrastinated, which I think for most of us, when we feel stressed out, what happens is we push off doing something. So we lose that consistency. Ease of use is a big thing. So again, when we think holistically about our online presence, is it easy for people to become a customer or a fan or to connect with us in some way? So to me, as you're using different tools and you're building your online presence, you actually want to sometimes go click on them, act like a customer, test out things, pay yourself on Venmo, pay yourself on PayPal, know how long it takes somebody to do that process. Go to your Facebook page and look at it. And if you want outside opinions, get people you trust to come in and test it for you and give you some feedback. How does it look? How does it make them feel? Could they find everything they needed, right? We don't always have the money to do giant focus groups and the things that big companies do. But if you got 5 of your friends to feedback with you about how things are looking on your various channels, what they think about it, what suggestions they have, you will get so much good feedback and you will really create something, even without a website, that people can really engage with, connect with, and will actually sort of bring them closer into the fold. Yeah, and thanks so much for the comments in there, Katie and Maddie. I really appreciate it. I'm glad this is resonating with some folks. I feel like marketing, I've done a couple, I have a great ebook out there. If you go to my website, sarahbenoit.com, you can download it, but it's called Everyone Knows Marketing Sucks. And I really feel like we have to address that marketing is just not always seen as a fun thing. And after 20 years, I really want us to think of marketing as something that we love as business owners, not some drudgery that we're forced into. Because I always tell people, even if you don't think people know that you don't like marketing yourself, trust me, it comes through. It comes through subconsciously to people when you don't really want to be there, show up and connect. So it's like we really have to find in ourselves what gets us excited about this process, right? And then credibility, this was mentioned earlier when it comes to why you'd even have a website. So I would just argue that not only does your website bring credibility, but every other channel that you have on the web brings you credibility. It makes you trustworthy. It legitimizes what you're doing, right? So this is where I often tell people, if you have a LinkedIn, but you just have that gray blob like avatar head up there, please put your picture up or delete your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional website. If you're going to be on there, show up fully. It's a resume. When people Google your name or they Google your business name, LinkedIn will be right at the top of page 1. So will Facebook, so will Twitter, so will Instagram. And so if you are creating all these channels, but never having time to set them up, put up a picture, put up a logo, fill out the about section. When people Google you and find you, it looks like you're half present on all these different channels. That actually reduces your credibility, right? It reduces your legitimacy and your trustworthiness. And that was actually enhanced by the pandemic, right? Because a lot of people now are afraid that what's online is not 100% accurate because so many people kind of let things fall by the wayside during 2020. We're just now kind of seeing people go back through and update things and get rid of things that they don't need, right? And make sure that their whole presence really says the same things, has accurate information, makes it easy for people to reach out and connect. And so credibility doesn't just apply to websites, it actually applies to every single channel that you're using and how you're presenting yourself out there. So like I said, we're going to bounce back and forth today. I'm going to talk a little bit about actionable strategies and tools, but as I'm talking about each one, I'm actually going to switch over so we can take a look at some of this stuff live and in action. And there's a few things that I can't show you live and in action just because they're more proprietary tools. Like Venmo, I'm not going to plug in my Venmo and start showing it to everybody just because the back end has a lot of personal information inside of it, including client information. But a lot of the tools we'll be able to look at. And so again, I want to encourage folks, if there's tools that you're interested in, that you have very specific questions about, we can sort of take a tour today, look at different aspects of tools, and I'm glad to answer any questions that folks have. Also, I want to just say, when we talk about these tools, there's many different versions of the tools that I'm talking about. So I'm definitely going to represent the tools that I work with all the time, that I love, but most of all, because I work with small businesses that I think are affordable. They're either have some sort of free version or they're very, very affordable on like a monthly fee or an annual fee. Of course, there's like a million pieces of software in the world, and a lot of them do the same thing. So, you know, if there's something you like better, don't hesitate to throw that in the chat or share it with us if there's something that you're using that does the same thing. So the first thing I want to talk about is buying a domain and setting up an email that's like an official email for your business. I'm sure many of you have already done this, but one of my favorite ways to do it is to use Google Workspace. Google Workspace, formerly called the G Suite, is sort of a small business kind of tool that you pay a monthly fee per user. I think we'll look at it in just a second, but I feel like they range from like $6 all the way up to like maybe $20, $18, $20 a month. And it depends on kind of how big or small your business is. So I feel like most small businesses can start out that really, really affordable price and for just one user, right? They can get an email for themselves. They can even purchase their domain from there if they'd like. And this is a great option because of the security I feel that's involved with Google. I've been using Google for over 20 years. I use Google Workspace every day. It can grow with your business. So if you start out as one person, but down the road you have 50 people working for you, Google Workspace can keep just graduating up. You can just keep adding users, right? So it makes it really easy to kind of set up a professional look and a professional email in the beginning. Most of the domains are going to be super affordable, like you would find anywhere else. So as long as you're not trying to buy a domain that somebody's trying to sell for $10,000, you could usually get it for somewhere between, you know, $10 and $20 a year. So that you just purchase that domain. If you've already bought a domain, you can connect it to Google Workspace. So if you already own a .com, a .org, a .net, you know, any of those, you can actually still go in, set up Google Workspace and just connect your domain from GoDaddy or, you know, another website with this system. But what this does is basically open up not only email and having a professional domain associated with you, but you then also get a huge amount of other business tools. So how many of you, if you just, for those of you on camera, have used the Google Drive already before? Let's put your hand up. Awesome. So a good chunk of folks. And if you're in the chat, feel free to share if you've used Google Drive before. I love Google Drive because I can create documents, spreadsheets, presentations, like PowerPoint style presentations. And I can even create a ton of online forms where I can just set up a whole form, send a link to a customer, and they can give me all sorts of information. And so it's kind of immediate access into this system that allows me to really run my business from that system. It also makes it very shareable. And the great thing is I also use quite a bit Microsoft 365, which is basically the online version of Microsoft Office. Google Workspace is very, very similar to what Microsoft 365 offers. I think Microsoft 365 is a little bit more expensive, but if you prefer Microsoft tools, you can actually do something very similar where their system is concerned. And one of the things I love about Google Workspace is if you like using Microsoft tools sometimes, or you need to use them, I can create a Google Doc and then I can export it as a Microsoft Word document. So Google really kind of stuck it to Microsoft when they built their system, because they were like, we're going to make it 100% compatible. And if you're using like Gmail, you get access to all this stuff for free. But I do think for most businesses, there's a point in which it's worth it for us to pay that $6 a month and to buy our domain so that we have a more official looking email and not just a Gmail. And there's a lot of other reasons we'll talk about as we're looking at other tools that are important. So I just want to really quick, just in case folks have not seen Google Workspace before, and these links will also be in the presentation so that you can click back over them. But this is sort of the standard pricing. Like I said, the first one is $6, then it goes 12, then 18. You can try it for free for 14 days. And so again, it does take a little bit of a learning curve because there's an admin console. You got to set up the emails. If you have a domain already, you have to connect it, or you might need to buy the domain. So you do want to have some time set aside to set this up. But at the end of the day, I think it works really, really well. You can see they have a little chat here. And there is some very standard support built in. So they have a lot of different support tools. There's lots of videos out there about Google Workspace. I often tell people, if you have a question about it, just Google it. And literally, you usually go right to the part of Google where they explain how to do different things in the workspace, which is great. And if we just go back really quick and take a look at Drive, this is where before some of my students and clients have had a website, I'm inside of my Drive right now. I have the ability to create all sorts of folders. And actually, let's get out of my search bar because then we can see kind of what my folders look like. So I've got lots of different projects. I work with a number of different companies and projects. So each one of them has their own sort of area in my Drive. If I want to click in, this is a project I've been working on the last couple of years. I click into tactics. I've got all this information about our program. Been writing curriculums. I've been running classes for the last 2 years. And everybody on our team, there's about 8 of us, we all have access to this folder, right? So we can easily share things, talk about things. And then if I come up here to the new area, this is where I'm accessing a lot of the tools in Drive. So I can create another folder. I can upload files from my own computer, but then I have Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Forms. This is basically like Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Microsoft doesn't have anything quite like Google Forms. It's a little unique. And then if you click more, there's even a lot more applications inside of Google Drive. So if you've never checked this out, it's amazing. There's like amazing tools inside of Google Drive. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. Some of them connect to Gmail, some of them connect directly into Drive. You can see some of them connect to things like Dropbox, Sign. That's something you could use to write your contracts and have clients sign off. So there's so many different ways that your business can expand into this space. Are there any questions about Google Drive or Google Workspace, or any feedback folks want to share if you're using it already? And again, for those of you who aren't on camera, feel free to chat in if there's anything there. I'm keeping track of the chat while we're going. So once we kind of have a domain, we've got an email set up. I think that stuff is kind of a first step, right? Because it's sort of, again, we're taking that first step towards credibility. We have, something we can put on our business cards that looks really great. And George, I see your comment. One caution, make sure you have a backup of your Drive files. So yeah, absolutely. I have multiple backups to different things. I back up my computer. A lot of times I back up different things on Google that are really important. So a lot of my contracts, I'll save versions of them and I'll have copies of them somewhere else. But a lot of times I will say Google does a great job of making sure that they have their own backups as well, right? So if Google were ever to go down, they have typically completely backed up their whole entire system. And they do that pretty frequently, but it's good for all of us to also take initiative with things that would be, it's really important for us to make sure that we have access to them, that we kind of save them different places. Maybe you have a backup hard drive, things like that. One thing I do love about Google Drive though, and keeping things up there is if my computer crashes out, I can just go buy a new computer, log on to Google, and all of my stuff is there. I don't have to worry about lost files. So a lot of times if I'm saving things on my computer, I also have copies of them in Google Drive in case anything were ever to happen to my computer as well. And also, I don't know if anybody here is in healthcare, but I will say that basically they do have a HIPAA compliant version of Google Drive that you can pay for. So if you're in a regulated industry, they have a few different options for making sure that you have the level of encryption that you need in order to do things like run a doctor's office and things like that. So again, I see some new folks are joining us. Feel free to just jump into class. And if you've got questions, you can drop them into the chat or let me know that you want to unmute, but welcome. So once we've got kind of a domain, the next thing that I like to think about is usually I like to use Canva for my clients is really what are kind of the elements or what we call the brand assets that we need visually. And sorry for the typo, y'all, I just noticed that. But a lot of times I want to put together what we call kind of a style guide or a brand kit for myself or for the student or client so that we begin again to have this like visual consistency and consistency in our language. And so Canva is a great tool because you're able to hop in there and really develop a number of things inside of their tool and save them. So that later on, when you're making posters, when you're making Facebook posts, when you're making Instagram graphics, when you're making business cards or any of that stuff, you can actually just choose the same fonts, choose the same color codes, and even sort of pick templates and save them into your system so that you're able to actually just have a really, really strong sort of look and feel that is coming across all the different pieces of marketing collateral that you're creating. And again, if you worked with a professional, they would be talking to you about all of this before they did the work for you so that they could make sure a lot of times a branding consultant will actually create your style guide. They'll actually create your branding kit for you. So they'll give you colors, fonts, they'll give you some language suggestions. They'll give you stock photos that fit the mood that you're trying to create, right? Some of you may have experienced, if you've worked with a designer, they'll even create what they call a mood board, right? So that they can sort of, get the feel for what you're trying to convey to people. The Canva system has a free version, but the Pro is like just under $100 a year. And I really suggest everybody consider paying that because one of the things that I love is I can pick a template that I like, let's say for Instagram, I can create a graphic out of it. And then because I'm a Pro user, I can click resize and it'll resize it for Facebook. I can click resize and I can resize it for a print layout. And then I just have to drag and drop so that the template looks cool in all of its different forms. And then I can save them to my Canva account. So I can come back later and update them in different ways with different information. So the upgrade to the Pro version of Canva, most of us feel like it's super, super useful because of how fast and easy we can change up we can take one style and really change it into different shapes and forms, whether we need to, like I said, print, use it in an email, use it on LinkedIn or whatever it is. Canva would also allow you, if you hadn't created a logo, to create your own simple logo. I do think there's a lot of value in hiring a professional graphic designer. But again, sometimes in the beginning that there's no budget for that. And so a lot of times we want to be thinking about those questions I asked earlier. Who are we talking to? How do we want them to feel? All of that stuff. And that can help us really create at least an image for now that we're comfortable with, that we feel good about. And again, that we can use consistently throughout different things. And I do think it's really important, as you can see in that last bullet, to talk to people that you trust about their opinions and what they think, and to hear from different people. Because sometimes what I define, when I say, how do I want to make people feel? And I say, I want people to feel, relaxed, and I want them to feel like they're having a good time and that what we're doing is fun. That's part of my brand. But that's pretty subjective. Right? What I think of as fun might not be what everybody else thinks of as fun. And so it was important for me in the beginning, when I created my own first logo, to really ask a few people what they got from it when they looked at it, right? It was really insightful for me to understand how it could be interpreted by different types of people. And so I'm a really big fan of talking to like the 5 closest friends that you have, or asking your family members to give you some feedback if that's who you have access to. If you have colleagues that you trust, you could ask them. But just getting some feedback and doing your own kind of on the fly focus group can be super helpful, and just really allowing yourself to expand outside of kind of the silo of your own thinking, and just stand more in the shoes of potential customers and think of things from their perspective, right? And you can also upload your own photos right to Canva. So if you've been taking your own product photos, if you have photos of yourself that you really like, if there's pictures that you've had done in the past that you want to reuse, all of those things can be uploaded. And Canva also has stock photos built right in. And then they also have an area in Canva called the brand kit. And that's where, if I'm a pro user, I can actually say, here's my top 5 colors, and it saves them. Here's my 2 favorite fonts, and it saves them. And it allows me, when I'm playing with the templates, to literally just choose, right? And from my brand kit, what I need. And so again, I wanted to just give you a quick little eye of my pro account here, which I pretty much use religiously. And again, if you're an Adobe person, Adobe has something called Adobe Express. I don't like it as much, but it has similar qualities to this. I feel one of the things that Canva has done right is you can see that they literally cover all sorts of things. So what will you design today, right? Documents, whiteboards, presentations, social media, videos, print products. You can even work on your own website graphics inside of Canva, which is great. They're actually implementing a lot of cool AI tools going forward. So this system is going to get easier and easier and easier. It's actually already pretty drag and drop. But I'm really excited to see what they're able to do by integrating some more AI. So I just wanted to show you an example. You can see here there's recent designs. I'm going to click on this design. This is actually a personal meetup that I host in Asheville. I call it the Astrology Cutie Meetup, which quite honestly has worked out really well. I've gotten new people every month, and I'm getting to make friends with a bunch of new people that I've never met before, which is pretty awesome. You can see when I open this up, this is a template that I took and then I edited it to kind of match up with some other things that I'm doing in this space. Astrology is one of my side passions. I've been doing it for 20 years. But you can see when I roll over this planet actually has a color scheme attached to it. Now, when I first looked at this template, this color scheme was very different, but I wanted to go with the bright pinks, the bright purples, the turquoise, the golds. Those are colors that I often work in. And so I literally just clicked on that Saturn, and then I started clicking onto the colors. And then here's some different color palettes. But if I want to choose my own, I just click that plus sign. And now I can actually drop in my own color code, right? The other thing that I can do is, let's say I don't know my color codes yet. I can click here, I can drag this around. It's going to show me the different shades of this kind of teal color. And when I get to a color I like, here's what we call the hex code. Right. And so I'm able to really explore the different colors in the codes. The great thing about knowing the color codes is that then when you're creating anything else down the road, whether it's in Canva or somewhere else, you can say to people, our turquoise is this turquoise, our pink is this pink, our purple is this purple. And that's how all colors are read on the internet, right? Is through these color codes. There's different versions in the print world, but when we're doing digital, we're mostly going to focus on hex colors. Right, and I've accidentally changed that color. I'm just going to click this undo, and it's going to take me back to my purple. So again, I can play around with things, and I have the ability to undo it. Right, if I click on to the text, I have different fonts available in here, and I can play around and change the fonts. There's tons of fonts inside of Canva for free. I also have some Google fonts that I've gotten online for free, and I can upload those fonts directly into the system. Right, so one client that I worked with, they used this font. It's called Avenir. And so you can see these are uploaded fonts, right? And I can add them by using the add your brand fonts here. So if you have a font that your designer created, you could upload it here and use it on Canva. And so you'll see as I click, all these little elements have different colors. I can drag and drop them and move them different places, all the way down to the tiny stars, right? I even change the colors of those tiny stars. I can touch the text, change the size, change the font, change the color of the text. I can bold things, italicize things, I can make bullet points. So these editing tools are very similar to the ones that you're familiar with. If I click into the background, I also have the ability to change the background. I could make this the stars, which it is right now, an actual photo of the stars, but I could actually make it a solid color. I could pull any photos in. If I go over here and start clicking down the left-hand side. So there's all sorts of graphic elements, animated graphics, stock videos, stock photos, different types of grids or highlights. I mean, it's literally endless in here. And I can even, so let's say I wanted to add hearts to this. If I type in hearts, it just starts bringing me all the different graphic elements that they associate with hearts. And I have different text options to make things more visually engaging. Again, I can upload all my own photos. I can even pull out these markers and draw things. If I'm really an artist, I can play around with that type of stuff. If we go down into photos, this is where they have a lot of their stock imagery. And you can see there's different categories. So if I click water, I get a bunch of stock images of water, right? If I start typing in here, let's say we do bunnies, I'm gonna get tons of stock images of bunnies as well. And there's even just backgrounds. So if you're not looking for a photo of something, there's all sorts of different types of backgrounds that you can use, right? So I can switch that background out. Now it's not stars, it's little plants. Or maybe I want to put butterflies back there, right? Or maybe I just want some polka dots back there. I can play around with all of this. So this is why I really suggest people get into Canva and think about what kind of style they want to create, what kind of feeling they're trying to give people. Think about who it is you want to attract. And really, like I said, organize some things so that you are able to have some color codes, some fonts, some images, and some things that you feel comfortable using on a regular basis. And if I click into Brand Hub, this is where, like I said, I'm able to add my own logo, my own color schemes, right? My own fonts. And then as I edit the templates, I literally just get them as a choice in the editor. So it's really fast and easy for me to work on that stuff. And so I see there's some questions in here. Can you clarify what you mean by poster effect? I'm not sure what you're referring to. You can unmute if you want. You can create posters here. There's actually, like I said, a whole area for creating print materials, but I'm not sure what the poster effect would be. There's thousands of effects inside of here. And I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right, but Osea, I'm not sure if you can answer my question about what more specifically you mean by poster effect. I'll just give you a minute to unmute if you can, or chat in. Yeah, sure. So if I go into Design Spotlight, it's giving me all these different things that I can play with. And here you'll see there's literally a posters option. And when I scroll down, there's, ways that I can actually shop, print, and do everything that I need to here. If I go into the templates, again, I could even search it up here, or I can look through the list, but I'm just going to put poster in the search bar. And now we're in the poster templates. And now I just have to start looking through the templates and thinking about exactly what it is that I want to create, who I'm creating it for. Is it just sort of a promo and something simple? Is it educational? You can see some things that you can make it look like a newspaper. You can make any size that you want. So if you want to custom size things, you can do it with the templates. When you click on it, you're going to see they come in standard print sizes. And so when you say a miniature poster, you might just be meaning a flyer or a rat card or something like that, right? So I don't think they'll call it a miniature poster, but they're all set to standard sizes for printing. So it's, again, if you're going to customize the size, you want to make sure that it's something that's going to work when you print it out on paper, that it's going to fit correctly, that you're not going to have to be trimming and adjusting. Or if you send it to a printer, you want to make sure that it's a standard size. So I want to go ahead because we're at 11:07. Let's take a 5-minute break and come back here at about 13 after. But I'll stay here if anybody has questions about Canva, about Workspace. Again, we're going to keep talking about some social media things in the second hour, but I'm glad to answer any questions. And Maddie, yeah, I see your question there. Everyone focuses on Google like it's the only search engine. Do I need to add Bing and Yahoo down the line? So here's the interesting thing. Google is not the only search engine, obviously. There's definitely others. Yahoo and Bing have been around for a long time. Bing has actually seen a pretty strong uptick the last few years comparatively. And especially because when you are using Facebook search and you start searching for something and it can't find it on Facebook, actually Bing is their backup search engine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when Facebook first started out, they actually gave Bing a nice big boost to just getting them again more usage because they have such a high number of people on there. But I think at the end of the day, what we can say is that Google search, they hold, depending on which country you're looking at, and they are not allowed in some countries, right? So Google has a long problem with China and some other countries because they believe in freedom per se in information, and that goes against sort of the cultural norms there. But in most countries where Google is, they hold somewhere between 92 and 98% of the search volume. So at the end of the day, Yahoo and Bing do have value, but we have to just understand that Google is the thing that the vast majority of people in the world use, right? They are the largest search engine on the planet. They dominate in basically every way. And so it makes more sense, especially as an SEO professional, that I focus on their technology because most people have followed their technology as the leading technology. So if I can perform well in the search engine on Google, I will probably do well on Yahoo and Bing. right? Because they are following many of the same principles. Now, I think with AI really advancing right now, we're going to see some of that change. So that'll be really interesting to see. I'm really excited to see what Google is going to do with AI. I'm appreciating that they're being very responsible in the way that they talk about it. But I've already seen a demo of what search is going to be like in the future. And it's kind of like magic. It's maybe the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
So
I
search
can't
is about
wait.
to be way more crazy than it already is. I mean, AI has been inside of Google. Machine learning has been there for, like 10 years minimally at this point. So, we've been using AI every day when we're searching Google for the last decade or so, maybe even more like 11 or 12 years. But essentially, I think, we're just going to see a big advancement in how much it can do itself. So we may see that this shifts over time because I'm not so sure. I think all the other search engines are going to be able to keep up with Google's advancement
Huh.
in that particular way. But I think right now, Google holds the lion's share of the market in almost every country where people search. Google is also the largest search engine in the world and owner of the second largest search engine in the world, which is YouTube. So the combined power of Google and YouTube to me means understanding the algorithm of Google and understanding the algorithm of YouTube is like really valuable for almost every business, because when you put those two things together, it's almost like insane. Like they really dominate a huge amount of how people look for things.
Like I have an alternative search engine that I use that's supposed to be more private, but I find myself very often going to Google because they suck. Like, I mean, Google is where it's at, but I think down the line, I might add something to Bing because I know a lot of people with the whole AI boom that just happened with Bing are using it. I'm not sure about Yahoo, but I may end up spending some time, promoting myself a little bit and working on Bing down the line.
Yeah. So the two tools that I recommend for most people, if they want to understand the authority of their website, because I think, search engine optimization, in my opinion, is no longer like a service that you buy. Like SEO is like 7 services that you do every month of your life, and you just constantly improve your website and do better. And so optimization means something very different in 2023 than it has ever meant. Even 5 years ago, it was a
See,
very
I thought
different
you could
ballgame.
just build a website and be done with it. I didn't realize that you have to be constantly going in and upgrading and how you want to add a blog and videos so people spend time there. Like I'm just starting to learn all that.
Yeah. And keeping in mind though, that websites can go in phases. So a website in the beginning can be an online business card, but
Mhm.
understanding that you're responsible for driving people there. Like magic is not going to just make people go to your website. You have to promote the website,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
so then, as you grow, you can kind of hit deeper layers of optimization, because some are about content and some are about the technology and some are about the links that point to your website. So just a tip, don't get so caught up in creating keyword content that you forget that half of your authority comes from whether or not people are linking to your website,
Yeah.
right?
Good point.
And keywords and links don't matter if people don't come to your website, stay there, and prove that it's a good website. So usability is a huge part of how Google is judging us. So we can't just sort of say like, if we blog, we're going to get farther. It's like, that's like one tiny percentage of a giant piece of pie of things that you could be doing to better your website. So
Did you say there was 7 CEO things you should be doing every month?
well, I was just saying I'm not going to give it that number because it's different for everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
What I'm saying is when people try to sell you SEO, I'd be very careful of that.
Yeah.
It's not real anymore, I don't feel. Like
Wow.
search engine optimization is a combination of website usability and understanding how to constantly improve your website so people really like it. It's a combination of understanding how algorithms work. It's a combination of writing great content that is like clearly stating what your themes are about. It's
Yeah.
about making sure that your website is accessible to people with different capabilities. If you have a physical brick and mortar location, there's an entire part of the industry called local SEO, which requires that you do a whole bunch of other things to promote people showing up on your doorstep and walking through your door. So I just think we have to be careful that like we don't think of SEO like we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago, which is write a bunch of keyword content and add a bunch of stuff, and that's going to get you to the top. That's a way oversimplified
That's like the
perspective.
second thing you've said today that has been such a relief to me because I did take an online training course yesterday on SEO, and I left feeling so overwhelmed that I about threw myself over the edge. It was just,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my, I'm just one person and I can't afford to be hiring people to do all this stuff for me. So that's the
Yeah.
second thing you said today, that I'm like, you know what, it's going to be okay. Like just slow and steady consistency, you know.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I really
Thank
agree.
you.
I always, when people say to me, what's your biggest hack for SEO? And I'm like, how are we hacking artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
The key to SEO is have a great website and know that it will always be better. Always.
Yeah.
You could always improve. That's actually what Google wants from us. They want us to realize that we could always be serving people better, that there's always something we can add to the website that makes it stronger. And they want us to really be clear on who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who it's for. And to like not clutter everything up with things that people don't need, but to really think about how do we help them solve their problems, get the products they need, hire us for the services they need as quickly and easily as possible, right? So that's actually where we should focus our energy in every decision we make, regardless of what channels we use, who we hire, whether we do it ourselves. Every decision we make has to be rooted in that stuff, or you're going to be making decisions that people say are optimization, and then they actually hurt you, right? Like that's the biggest thing that I find people struggle with right now when they're doing it themselves. And even sometimes listening to the professionals is that they get caught up in all these different things that they have to do. And I'm like, you didn't really have to do any of that yet. That
Yeah,
wasn't
that's such a
necessary.
relief, because honestly, I was just like, you know, I mean, how am I supposed to be doing all that and then drumming up the business, which I love what you said about marketing. And I definitely, I've already gone to your website to sign up for the ebook, but you know, because I was like really thinking of like, oh, marketing sucks. Like this isn't what I signed up for. Like I have a home organizing business because I love to organize, you know, like I'm not a marketing major. Like I'm not, you know, I would have gone into marketing if I wanted to be in marketing, right? But you just said, you know, switch that mindset.
Yeah.
And, you know, think of it as more just, you know, being fun and networking, which is like the N word, you know, that's more like just meeting people and establishing relationships. And it just was a real twist in my brain about how I was thinking about it. So you just said so many things today that have really been very helpful.
Oh, well, I'm so glad, because I feel like my biggest thing is I don't want people to give up. I don't want us all to get so overwhelmed.
That's how I felt
that we just-
yesterday. I was like, this is too much.
Yes.
I can't do this. You know, I'm just
Yeah.
one person and I can't afford as a small business owner to, you know, spend all this money hiring people, you know, hopefully
Yeah.
down the line. But yeah, just this has been a great class. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And it's funny because I will say I've been teaching a long time. And one of the things that I've really learned in the beginning, you know, because I'm just a geek and I'm very detailed. You know, the first bunch of classes I taught in year one, students were like, girl, you made my brain hurt. Now I just want to go home and cry. And I was like, well, that's not what I meant to do. So I've worked really hard. So I appreciate that, to make sure that this stuff feels like you can do it and you don't have to do everything. You have to do the 2 or 3 things that you can fit in this month, do it.
Like you said, you know, if I have an hour a day, that's great, or 10 minutes or whatever. But if it's just an hour a week, it's the consistency that's the key.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
do what you can, do what you can, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I appreciate that.
All right, so welcome back, y'all. We're going to jump back into the conversation because I know we want to talk a little bit about social media today. But again, I want to encourage everyone, Canva has a free version. Just going back to this, if you want to just play around with it, sign up for free. You can sign up with your Facebook, your Google, whatever. So if you've already created a Google account for your business, I suggest you use that to create your first free Canva account, and then just get in there and click. So I want to encourage folks, like if you're new to a tool like this, you're not going to sign up for the tool and start marketing tomorrow. You're going to sign up for the tool, and I want you to give yourself 30 to 60 days to just play with it. Click around, make some things, ask questions. Canva, one of the other reasons I recommend it to my students, they have amazing tutorials and free classes throughout the system. And, you know, but again, you have to be prepared for the learning curve. It is a piece of software. So if you've never touched it before, it's like you have to go in and click and click and click. And I often tell people, don't get into Canva, click around, avoid it for 3 weeks and then come back. Because you know what happens? You forget the entire thing. So I would rather that you set up a schedule where like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I got 20 minutes to click around on Canva and play with it. I set a timer. When that 20 minutes is up, I leave, right? But if I'm doing that 3 times a week, by the time I've done it for 3 or 4 weeks, I'm starting to remember where things are. And I'm starting to, again, have that confidence that I'm learning how to use something. So the other thing that I think all of us as adult learners do is we're all like, hey, I'm going to learn this thing and I'm going to learn it in 2 seconds.
Mm.
And I'm like, y'all, let us all be realistic that we're just regular folks. Our brains are just like everybody else's. So a lot of times I know we wish we could learn it faster, but if we're new to something, we have to have kind of a time set aside to be like, I'm going to really take time. Maybe I'm going to watch one tutorial a week so I can get more comfortable, right? And so just be realistic about that in yourself. Don't beat yourself up when it takes you a little while to get like comfortable. And so, Katie, I see your comments in here. And yeah, and that's why I just wanted to point out, that's why I was saying Canva can be overwhelming, and because it's a piece of software with a lot of options. But one other tip I'll give you is, if you really want to start simple, then just say, hey, I'm going to get in here and learn how to make my Instagram graphics. That's it. We're not going to look at 100 options. I know that I want to get some stuff up on Instagram. I'm going to make that my goal this month. I'm going to make 3 graphics and post them and see what people think. That's a complete legit way to like get started on building your Instagram, right? Or if you want to do a flyer, just start with that one thing so that you're not kind of because our brains will easily get overwhelmed when we see like 1,000 options. That's actually neuroscience. Our brains, especially in the US, because we have so much information coming at us, we actually don't want more than 3 most of the time. And when we see like a list of options, our brains are like, bye now. We're just like, see you later, not dealing with whatever this is. So it's like, sometimes if you can just focus what you want to accomplish, it makes it a little easier. And Katie, I see your comments. You started your own business to build a better life, and having fun with marketing will be a game changer, and more approachable and doable. And I just want to say, like, that makes me feel so grateful, just to get that feedback, because that's, I think, the most important thing. Learning becomes more fun. Doing things you haven't done before becomes more fun. Getting out of your comfort zone becomes more fun when you are really approaching it with that energy. When you're like, I can't wait to learn this. I can't wait to see what I'm able to do in 2 months. I can't wait to see how I'm able to change how professional I look, once I've kind of got this tool under my belt, right? And so, I always want us to kind of start from a place of, I'm enjoying this. And if there's days where you're working on something digital and you're not having a good time, my suggestion would be walk away. Like, just go away from it for some time, right? So I teach this a lot in social media. I'm like, if you're on Facebook and you're getting frustrated, don't sit there and continue that pattern. Just be like, I'm going to take a break and come back to Facebook later this afternoon. Because I guarantee you, 90% of the time when you do that, you come back refreshed. You're able to figure things out much, much easier. So a lot of times, again, as adults, we have to remind ourselves, don't push yourself so hard that you're just like really unhappy with the entire process of building your business. It's like, that to me is not worth it, right? Most of us who go into working for ourselves, it's because we're passionate. It's because we want to have freedom. It's because we have creative spirits. It's because we have these vision things that are really important to us. And I feel like that has to be the root of what motivates us. When we lose that motivation, then we're like, why am I doing this? I could just go get a job. And the first 7 years I was in business, I had a few moments where I was like, oh, I could just work at the gas station and it would be a lot easier. And I really had to work through that. I don't want to feel that way on a regular basis. And so I've had to create a lot of systems and workflows in my life so that I know how to handle those situations. I don't overwhelm myself and get stressed out and burn myself out, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit about social media. I'm going to talk mainly about Facebook and Instagram, but as I mentioned to y'all, I have a huge experience in tons of social media. I started out in social media in 2004. So before Friendster, before MySpace, before Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. We had about 30 million geeks hanging out in the middle of the night. We were using systems like Dig and Delicious and StumbleUpon. And these were more like idea sharing communities, where you could share articles and pictures and tell stories about yourself. And so I fell in love with this world early on. And I have found it to be a complete delight. And also a big challenge over the last 20 years to sort of embrace how intense this industry shifted, and how the tools really became something else, right? Especially because artificial intelligence has been a huge part of social media, especially in the world of Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn. Machine learning has been integrated into those systems for a long time. So again, there's not a lot of ways to hack the system or cheat the system. It's more about if your content is great, people will talk about it. And that's what proves to the AI that what you're saying has value to people, right? And so to me, we have a lot of the same principles with social media that we do with websites, which is your accounts can always get stronger. They can always get better. There's always something you can add. You can always have more conversations. You can always grow in that space. It's an organic space. Facebook and Instagram, I bring them up, and we're going to talk about YouTube in a minute as well. But I chose those three because when I look at Western North Carolina, they are the dominant platforms, right? And I know there's always this talk, oh, Facebook, everybody is going away from Facebook. None of the young kids care about it. I just want to say, like, the data just doesn't prove that. The data does not prove that. People have not mass exited Facebook, not even the younger markets. They're still there. Younger markets just tend to have multiple social media accounts. So like, let's say if I'm a 25-year-old, it is more likely that I have 3 or 4 social platforms that I'm using, and I'm using them for specific reasons, right? So I'm using Instagram to look at products and hang out with my friends. I'm using Facebook to talk to my mom and my grandma. I'm using Snapchat to have private messages with my friends, right? So younger markets, they just have more tools and they're using them for more specific purposes. Where if I'm 65 years old, 70 years old, like my mom, she would prefer just to do everything on Facebook because she doesn't want to have to log into like 3 different things. So she's just going to use that one platform for all the stuff, right? That's really the difference. It's not that, Facebook has been kind of put aside or somehow left in the dust yet. Meta is still next to YouTube, the top most, Facebook especially is the top most used system in the world alongside YouTube for social media. Facebook is also, in my opinion, alongside YouTube, they are the 2 things that I would say get in a holler. So if you're in rural America and you're deep in the mountains, is not as likely that you're using Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. It is very likely that you have interfaced with Facebook and you have interfaced with YouTube. So those 2 things have an insane saturation into the United States market. It's like well above, I think it's probably, gosh, I think YouTube's is probably at like 90 or maybe above 90%. Facebook's is usually, depending on the year, sometime between like 78 and 85%. So we really see, that these 2 systems are getting in there. But feel free to ask me questions about anything else, because I do think if you don't like Facebook, if you don't like Instagram, and I have some serious like personal issues with Meta these days, if you don't want to use those systems, you genuinely don't have to. There are other systems. Pinterest is one of my very, very favorites. And it has a lot of power to it. So I don't want to take away from that. But I wanted to talk about the things for our class today that I know are really popular in WNC, because I feel like they do have kind of a broader reach, and it's where a lot of us are already interacting. And especially in Western North Carolina, Facebook really does have this huge community network on it of people from all walks of life and all aspects of our region. And it's very, it's just very ubiquitous. You can find it pretty much everywhere. And even sometimes people don't like it, they're still using it to connect to the community, find out about events, join certain groups, right? Even if they don't want to post and kind of engage in the feed, there's lots of stuff there. And Facebook Messenger is its own app. And Facebook Messenger is now used by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people across the country. And there are a lot of people where they may not focus on posting to Facebook very often, but they are using the Facebook Messenger system quite a bit to talk to their customers. And that also is true for Instagram. I've even worked with one artist in Asheville where she is a potter. She uses Instagram as her main key platform. When she launches her new pottery lines, she does these like launch parties on Instagram and goes live, and she typically sells out in a few days of every single product. So she is literally making 100% of her money through Instagram marketing, and that is it. She even refers to everybody who follows her as a collector. And she told me that she spends probably at least an hour every single day private messaging with her own collectors. And that she's built such strong relationships with them. That's why they love to get excited about her launches. And then they all show up on the same day or 2 or 3 days, and they just buy out all of her new stuff when she launches it. So that's a good example of how if you put all your energy into a community, you really show up, you really build the relationships, that can really spiral and kind of build and build over time. Until you have a really strong fan base, which is really exciting. With Facebook and Instagram, I think there's a few things, again, that go along with making a strong presence. So one is complete the about section, every part of the about sections that you can complete. In the spirit of credibility as a business, a professional, a brand, we really want to make sure that we are putting ourselves truly out there, right? In this day and age, if I go to a social media account and I'm looking at somebody that I might hire or somebody whose products I might buy, and there's like no way for me to contact them, there's no real way for me to ask questions and get a response in a timely manner, I'm immediately going to downgrade the credibility that you have as a professional to me. Doesn't mean I don't like what you're doing, but it's just going to make me feel like, okay, this person is not really treating this like a business, right? And so I can't be guaranteed that I'm going to get the attention that I need, the customer service that I might need. You also want to make sure, as we talked about before, that you've either created a logo or maybe you've chosen a photo of yourself that you feel comfortable using across different channels, something that's going to be identifiable, right? And easy to see in small format, especially because most people on social media are on their phones, right? And so we don't want to have a logo or an icon that is so complicated that when it's small, it's really hard to identify what the graphic is. So earlier Anne mentioned, simpler is better. That's actually true across all digital marketing. Don't overcomplicate things because people are going to look at stuff for a matter of seconds. It's very subconscious how they identify the consistency of a brand across multiple channels. You want to make sure, like I said, all the contact information is accurate and the same in as many places as possible for your social media. If you can, you want to make sure that you've chosen handles or sort of the account names so that they're all very similar. Again, so that when people see it, they know that's your business or that's you, right? We don't want to kind of have like different names on Instagram versus Facebook if we can help it. We really want to keep those things very, very clean and easy to see. And then when it comes to social media, like I said, when we have our kind of brand kit set up, we feel comfortable about who we're trying to reach out to and how we're trying to make people feel. When we get those sort of things all set up, then we really need to have content in our schedule because content's going to go a number of different places, right? It might go to social media. It might also go to a Google business listing. It might also be something that gets put into a newsletter. So that content, we want to have time set aside, whether it's once a week, every other week, whatever it is, to actually work on developing some messaging, putting together some visuals, and then actually sharing them out into the world. The other thing that I include in social media, which is also what I call local SEO. We were talking about this at the break. Local search engine optimization is something that a lot of brick and mortar businesses do. So if you have an art gallery, a restaurant, a hair salon, a retail stop, or shop, any of those types of things, even if you are a services business and you have an office, that opens up an opportunity to use something like Google Business Listings to drive traffic to your physical location. But even if you don't have a physical location, you can still sign up for a Google Business Listing, and then you can tell it to hide your physical address so that you're not attracting people to your physical location. And when you click the button, it's usually a little checkbox to hide your address, it essentially allows you to set like a service area for how far you will go to interact with people. Google Business Listings are incredibly important because they have this sort of dual piece where they are an SEO tool because they usually put you into Google Maps. It's also where you get all of your Google reviews, and you can put up a ton of information about your hours, about the different products and services that you offer. All sorts of different things are included in the system. And to me, that is a very strong, because if you go to your phone right now, and let's say you pull up the Google app or you pull up the Chrome app one of the search engines, what you're able to see is that when you type in, let's say, and you can try this if you want, if you type in something like hair salon, or you type in something like grocery store, or you type in something like Mexican restaurant on your phone, usually what happens when you put that into the search is immediately at the top, you're going to get the listings with the maps attached to them. So I'm just going to pull up, when I type in Mexican restaurant, if y'all can see that in the little box there, but it's like right at the top, I get the Google map, and then I get these little listings for different restaurants that are right up the street from me. Now I'm in DC and my phone knows I'm in DC. So it's not showing me restaurants in Asheville. It's like, here's the Mexican restaurants that are right outside of your hotel, right? Because it's all geo-targeted. And so when it comes to people finding you, when they're searching for a product or service or type of business, Google Business Listings gives you this huge opportunity to especially show up on mobile devices. Even if your address is not listed to the public, Google knows what your address is, and it will bring your listing up to people who are in close proximity to where you are. And it will put you above people that are not as close to that person. So as people drive around Asheville or drive around DC or drive around Atlanta or any other part of the US, as they're driving around, what shows up at the top changes based on their physical location. And so those map listings are entirely controlled by Google Business Listings. And yeah, Katie, Google always really does know what we're doing. It's kind of insane. It's 100% Big Brother, but I will say it makes my life easier that Google knows all about me. It tells me when to go to the airport. It reminds me of my appointments. It's doing a lot of stuff to manage my business and my life, which is super helpful. Google Business Listings also have a feature where you can add a post once a week. So that's why I see it now also connected to this sort of social media world. So if I have a great listing, I've got a lot of good reviews, I can also start sharing out events and linking people to different things. I can share announcement about sales on our products. I can make little graphics to go with it. And so basically when people find my business, if they click onto the listing, they're going to start to see all this other sort of interactive stuff. And like I said, the Google reviews are really, really valuable for almost every industry and every business. Once you sign up for Google Business Listings and you verify your account, you actually can get a link. And so every time you have a customer, when you're done, you can shoot them an email and say, hey, write me a review on Google. They click the link and they can review their experience right there. The more reviews that you have, the more photos that you add, the more videos that you add, the more that your account is interactive, the more exposure that your listing will potentially get, right? So it's really awesome. It's like the more you use the tool, the better the tool will do for you, because Google is kind of saying, oh, this business is highly engaged in keeping people up to date about what's happening. They're keeping things, they're editing things and making sure everything's accurate. That's going to give your listing stronger credibility overall. And like I said, we're going to hop on and tour a few things, but I want to mention YouTube as well. Similar principles. If you create a YouTube channel, if you prefer video, to let's say writing an email newsletter, YouTube might be a great thing to create. Again, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, owned by Google, which is the largest search engine in the world. So Google Business Listings and YouTube channels, to me, for people who haven't built their website yet, this is a huge opportunity for people to find you who don't know about you, and a huge opportunity to engage people that are already supporting what you do. And they have an about section where you can complete a lot of information about who you are as a business, what you offer. You can customize the channel again to have a banner that has your colors, to have your logo or your picture up there so it's recognizable. One additional thing that I think YouTube can really benefit from if you build a channel is if you do keyword research, which is typically considered part of search engine optimization. You really can kind of learn what people are typing in and then build video content that is directly related to what people are searching for. Rather than making it up, why not title your video a question that people actually type into Google, right? If you know that there's a topic that's really popular out there in the world of Google, why not make a series of videos about that topic, right? Because that is going to enhance the visibility of the content, the video content you've created. So I'm going to show you an example of how to do simple research by yourself. One other tip that I've learned from working with people who've created YouTube channels that are actually monetized and making money is that the more specific you are about your channel and the more specific you are about the videos, the better they'll do. So some people have a whole channel that's very niched down, right? So for instance, I was working with a woman recently. She has, she's a consultant in the insurance, the healthcare insurance business. And she was helping lots of people across the board in insurance. But when she talked to her business coach, her coach was like, you know, your whole career was in healthcare. All your connections are in healthcare. I think you should take this company and focus right down on health insurance. Don't worry about all the others. Later on, if people ask you for that, you can let them know that you're available to help. But right now, if we want to get people through the door, the best way to get to them is to be very clear that you are a health insurance specialist. You've been doing it for 20 years. You can help them solve their problems. And so she's been working on that. And we took that idea about her website and then started putting it into her other channels, right? So that we could really make sure that the titles are not just insurance, but they are specifically about health insurance, because people don't search Google with broad terms. They search Google with very specific things that they need, right? Because the search engine is smart enough. And then on YouTube, a lot of people don't create playlists. So I'm a big fan of using the playlist feature on YouTube because of two things. One, I can create playlists for different audiences, right? So on my JB Media YouTube, we have a playlist for SEO. We have a playlist for social media. We have a playlist for Google Ads, right? So if you come to our channel, you're able to figure out what topic you care about most and watch all the videos about that topic, right? Without having to just scroll through all sorts of different videos about broader digital marketing, right? The other thing that I love is that the playlist features allow you to upload your own content, but you can also curate content from other channels and add it to the same playlist. So the SEO playlist that I've created, it's got my videos in it, but it's also got all these other SEO videos from my favorite experts teaching you different things, right? And so I'm able to curate and produce content. I don't have to produce content all the time to grow the playlist and give people something new to listen to. I can add my own videos, or I can curate things that I know are really trustworthy. And for me as an educator, that's something that my clients really come to me for, right? I'm keeping up with the trends. I'm making sure that we're looking at things that are credible and trustworthy and accurate. And so they like that they can go somewhere and get things that I'm recommending are really valuable, rather than them just trying to sort through the whole of YouTube to figure out what matters to them. So again, I just want to hop off here and open up for questions about Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And as we're doing this, I'm going to pull up one of my business pages because I want to talk a little bit about some of the amazing things that we can do. And again, feel free. I know some of you are chatting questions, so if I see them pop up, I'm definitely paying attention. So I know it takes a minute. But one of the things I wanted to mention about Facebook and Instagram is the Meta Business Suite, which is a tool that I feel is a little confusing, but once you get a hang of it, it is maybe one of the greatest tools that has ever been created, and it's free. If you have a Facebook business page, you can use it. If you have a Facebook business page and an Instagram business page, you can actually connect those things and then use the Meta Business Suite to manage both of your pages at once. And it saves you a huge amount of time. So you can see when I log into Facebook, if you look in the upper right, I'm actually myself, right? This is my little picture of me, Sarah Benoit. If I actually click on that, it shows this is my personal account. I can actually click this and switch in to the brand, which is called AIGA Asheville, or you can see it's prompting me right here that if I want to manage my business page, that I switch over and I become AIGA Asheville. So when I do that, I'm leaving my personal account and I'm now my business. I'm operating on Facebook as a business. So if I look up here, if I'm just using Facebook, I have some tools that are just Facebook based. But because I have connected, my AIGA Asheville Facebook business page to my AIGA Asheville Instagram business. I've actually connected them and I have this tool called the Meta Business Suite. When I open this up, it's going to open up a whole separate area of Facebook. And this is actually also an app that you can download to your phone. So if you want to have Meta Business Suite on your phone and manage Facebook and Instagram from there, you just download the free app and you can use it on your phone or your tablet as well. And inside of here, there's a few things I want to highlight. One is, and you can see, this is what shows me that I've connected the accounts, right? So I can see that I have both of these things created. It gives me an area of notifications for both of the accounts. So I don't have to go look at Instagram and go look at Facebook. I'm able to see all of the different notifications here, and it has an icon. So this is a notification from Instagram. This is a notification from Facebook, right? If I click on it, it'll take me to the post and let me look at it. And you can see it drop me down into this tool called content. This is basically where I can create Instagram posts and Facebook posts, Instagram stories and Facebook stories, and Instagram and Facebook reels. And I can not only post them from here, but I can schedule them from here, right? So this is where I could sit down on a Monday and make enough posts for Instagram and Facebook for the next 2 weeks, put them all up and then leave. Now I have to post again for the next 2 weeks, right? So I have to have it in my workflow, but it's like now I'm able to just schedule everything out. And so if I go up here, you'll see I have some shortcuts like create reel, but under create, if I drop this down, it says create post, create story, create reel. So I can create a lot of different content directly from this system. And again, if I'm on my phone, I can do this in the app as well. Now, one of the cool thing is, let me just click create post. I think this is probably the one that I use the most. I like creating reels on my phone just because it's faster and easier, but I do all of my posts through here. And you can see I can write the text, I can add photos and videos. They even have some templates I can play with. And then I have a publish now, schedule, or save as a draft. And as I'm adding things, it starts to actually build the post next to me. Right, so if I pull up a photo, drop this stock photo in there, it literally starts to show me what the post looks like on the right-hand side. And it even has this little toggle switch so I can see what it'll look like on a computer versus what it'll look like on a mobile device. So I actually get to see the creative and kind of how it's going to play out in different areas. And I even have these tools here if I have a physical location. So if I tag this, so I'm right now, I'm in the Crowne Plaza in Crystal City. If I could spell, that would be helpful. So here's the Crystal City Crowne Plaza. I add that location. Now it's going to tag the hotel if I post this, right? And they're going to get a notification that I was at their hotel and I was talking about them. The other thing that I can do here at the top is I can create a post for Facebook. I can create a post just for Instagram, or I can create a post and send it to both. Now, I'm going to advise that on Instagram, hashtags are really important. And on Facebook, you shouldn't be using them at all. So I personally am a fan of not sending the same post to both places at once. I'm going to write a post, add the hashtags, send it to Instagram, then delete the hashtags and send it to Facebook. Right? Same thing with links. I can have a link on Facebook that people click on, but on Instagram, links aren't clickable. I have to say hashtag link in bio, and I have to put it in my bio. Right? So I really want to think about how Instagram and Facebook are different. As I start adding content, it actually creates this planner. And so this basically shows me everything I've scheduled through this week. I can edit it if I need to. I can look at different weeks. And so as I'm scheduling things, it's actually building out an entire sort of planner for me inside the system. And again, I can see this is Facebook, this is Instagram, this is Facebook, this is Instagram. And again, I have posts up here and I have stories up here all ready to go for this week while I was at DC. And then the other awesome thing is your inboxes on your Facebook business page and Instagram business page are combined here. You can answer all of your messages from one place, and it tracks all of your Facebook comments and all of your Instagram comments. And so when you see the alerts, so if I look at this Facebook comment, I can click here and see the post, and then I can come in here as AIGA and I can respond to people, right? I can add comments. So again, I don't have to go back and forth anymore between the accounts. I can manage everything from one place. And again, like Canva, this is going to have a learning curve. So, you know, take your time, have some time set aside to click around. Don't rush yourself. It does take a little bit to get used to it, but it's super, super useful. And I feel like YouTube also has a lot of tools built in there. They're just very different because I don't feel like YouTube requires you to be on there posting all the time. On YouTube, you could be uploading, you know, videos and turning the comments off. So you don't even have to manage the comments on YouTube if you don't want to. And quite honestly, I suggest that. I find YouTube comments to be a horrible, horrible experience. I would much rather answer comments on Facebook and Instagram than YouTube. So a lot of times I'm using YouTube a little bit more for that search engine value as a business. And then I might be using Facebook and Instagram a little bit more for the social media value. But these are great ways that they all look the same. They all have links. The names are similar. When you don't have a website, you can be sharing your YouTube channel, sharing your Facebook page, sharing your Instagram page as a main way for people to come and engage with you first before you have a website done. So the last two things I want to mention are MailChimp and a system called Linktree, which I really love. MailChimp is a email newsletter system I'm sure you've heard of. There's also ones like Constant Contact. There's another one that I love called Aweber. MailChimp is really popular because historically they have had a free version. So if you have a small list of less than like 500 people, they'll let you use their system for free. But again, without a website, one of the things that you can still do is create a list that people can sign up for. I'm a big fan of telling people, hey, we're going to be building our website and launching it in 6 months. In the meantime, sign up for our list and we're going to let you know when the website's live. And we're going to ask you to go check it out. And so I treat website launches like product launches. I want to hype it up. I want to talk about it on social media. I want to send out emails about it. Because at the end of the day, when I build my website, I'm not building it for myself. I'm actually building it for my existing and potential customers. And so I want them to get excited that I'm building it for them, for us to connect, right? And a lot of times when you do that, you'll discover there's probably at least a bunch of people in your life that are really excited that you're starting a company and that you've built a business. And so when you say like, hey, September 15th, the new website's out there, come and check it out. If you promote that leading up to that date, your website will go live and a bunch of people will go visit it. And that will really help you kick the website off in a big way. Especially Google will love seeing a website go live and a bunch of people going to visit it right away and clicking around and spending some time on the site. So don't be afraid to activate your friends and family, right, through things like MailChimp and social media so that they know when you need their support to be like, look at what I did, right? Because websites take a long time and they cost a lot of money. I don't feel like we celebrate enough that process. We don't treat it like it's something special, but it really is something that we should all be super proud of and excited to tell people about, right? And we want to invite people to come and tell us what they think and tell us what they think could be better, because our website should always be improving, right? So it's not about being perfect. It's about having something that's just you feel good about and that you're ready to put out into the world, knowing that it's going to evolve and change and it's going to continue to improve. So for those of you that are like me and have a perfectionism streak, I will tell you, perfectionism is the death of your digital marketing. You got to let it go. You got to let it go. It doesn't matter. Social media, especially, we never worry about perfection. Social media is a conversation. We'll get more perfect the longer we do it. We don't wait to be perfect so we can do it, right? Because that means we don't actually put ourselves out there. So I feel like a lot of these systems, don't worry about it being exactly perfect. Worry about it being as good as you can get it right now, and always know that you're going to be growing and changing. And that's actually how your whole business experience will be as you move forward, right? So with email newsletters, I think it's important to just make sure you have a domain, that you have your official email set up, because most email newsletters require that. You have to have a website email. You can't use your generic Gmails because of spam laws, right? You want to make sure people know why they should join the list. What's the value? What are you going to be doing with it? How often are you going to be sending it? And what are you going to share with them? Give them clarity. You don't want them to join the list if they don't care. I would rather you had 10 people on the list that cared than like 50 odd people on the list who don't care. So it's okay if people don't join. I would rather they join because they really wanted to support you and they really think what you're doing is awesome, right? So small and high quality is better than large and low quality, right? Small and engaged, way better than large and unengaged. So we're really going for quality instead of, or quantity instead of quality here. Be realistic. If you can only send an email once every quarter, then send it once a quarter. If you can only send it once a month, send it once a month. If you can only send it once every 6 months, just commit to that. Consistency is better than overshooting it and not doing it at all. So I really feel like in my heart, as long as people know when they're going to get it and why, they might stay subscribed and it might have real value. So it doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't have to be every month. It's really up to you how you feel is best to communicate. And like I said, if you have Canva, you're going to be able to create great graphics and videos. If you have YouTube, you'll be able to upload the videos to YouTube and then share the link in your email. And I really want to encourage you in emails not to be too businessy, to really be more personal with people. This is going in their inbox. It's a huge opportunity. They want to feel connected. And the last thing I want to mention is Linktree. Most of you may have heard of this from Instagram. And Linktree to me, and we're going to do a little live tour of this. Linktree to me is a really valuable piece because before you have a website, you can take your domain and redirect it to Linktree, and then Linktree can have a bunch of links to all of your different channels. And this is something, like I said, I really did learn from folks in Puerto Rico, which I thought was really, really smart the way that they did this. And so just to show you an example of what this looks like on the front end, when I'm on my Instagram, we use a Linktree so that we can have multiple links. So if I click our AIGA Asheville Linktree, it opens up this interactive list of links, right? So here's tickets to our upcoming event. Here's an application for Design Weekend. We have panelists that we invite to sign up for our monthly meetings, and then you can join our chapter. If you click on these, it takes you to the form to become a panelist. It takes you to the form to become a Design Weekend presenter. It takes you to Eventbrite to buy the tickets, right? And if we're on the back end, you can see it's really straightforward. I just click add a link. I put the URL in. So let's say I do that and I add the link. And then I can basically give it a title. So I can say, visit my website. Right? And then I just make sure that it's turned on because I can toggle them on and off, right? So you can see on the right, when I turn this on and off, it sort of adds and removes that button. So what I love about this is that if you don't have a website, what you can do is you can have a Facebook, you can have a YouTube channel, you can have an email newsletter sign up on MailChimp, and then you can create a Linktree and have buttons for each one of those things. Sign up for my newsletter, visit my Facebook, watch my YouTube videos, right? And then I can take sarahbenoit.com and just redirect it to the link that Linktree is giving me. So whenever somebody types in my .com, what pops up is this awesome list of links and all the different ways that they can access me, right? So again, this is a great leap, I think, in the beginning when you don't have a website, that you can actually use this system to create a kind of website experience. You can seem really professional. You can have a professional.com, and then you can send people there and immediately give them a choice of how they connect with you. Keeping in mind that with social media, if somebody is not on Facebook, they may have a hard time sending you a message, right? And so that's why I feel like it is important to have a few, maybe 2 or 3 channels to start, where people have a choice of how they connect, right? And so if I have a Google business listing, I can say, check me out on Google. They click and they see my listing. There's my phone number. There's my email, different piece of information. They can click and see my Facebook if they want. They can click over and sign up for my newsletter. And now they're really engaging with my business like a true brand, rather than kind of, just randomly finding me across the board. Right now, my business cards can have that .com, and it'll really allow them to sort of think of me in a more professional way. And yeah, Julie, I really appreciate that. Linktree is kind of like a digital hub. And in the US, we've been using it for Instagram, but I was amazed at how many people in Puerto Rico have businesses without websites. And this is a huge way that they're giving themselves real legitimacy and making it easy for someone to find everything about them in one place before the website ever goes live. Yeah, and Yolanda, yes. So if you have a domain, like I said, like sarahbenoit.com, when you log in to where you purchase the domain, whether that's GoDaddy or something else, they usually have the option for you to redirect the domain. When you create Linktree, it actually gives you a linktree.com / your name kind of link. And so all I have to do is tell my domain provider, I want my domain to redirect people to this link over here. So that way, when they type it in, or if they click the link in an email, it just redirects them to my Linktree link and they have access to everything there. So yeah, you do have to log into your domain provider and just make sure that you use that redirection tool. Yeah, I know we're right at 12 and everybody's got to get on their way back to work. I'm glad to stay for the next few minutes if there's any specific questions. Also included in the slide deck at the end is my personal contact information, my email and things like that. You can also find all my social media. So please consider me a resource. Don't feel like you have to Google things for 3 hours or whatever it is. I have a million resources at my fingertips and videos and links and articles. So always feel free to just email me if you have questions about any of these tools or about the way that you're trying to set things up right now. But I really appreciate everyone being here with me today. And like I said, just talking about one of my favorite subjects, because I think there's a lot of us in the small business world. There's so much we can do leading up to our websites that will actually make launching our website even more awesome when we're ready to do it. So thank you all so much for being here. And I appreciate all the comments. Thanks so much. I'm really glad this was helpful today. That means a lot. And actually, I'm just going to put my email in the chat. I am traveling back from DC for the next couple of days, but in case you want to put that on file, since I know sometimes your brain gets going after we have classes like this. If you've got questions, I'll be in a hotel tonight and I'll probably check my email when I stop driving. And so I'm glad to answer questions that come through later today as well. But again, thanks so much. And I hope to connect with all of you in the future. I'll also say in that contact information, I do a free webinar every month, the first Wednesday of the month, out of my office in West Asheville. And we talk about a ton of cool topics. And so that link will be in there as well if it's ever helpful to join our webinars. They're called the JB Media Digital Drop-ins. And we cover everything from SEO to social media to digital advertising. And we are going to be doing a Canva class the first Wednesday of August. So for those of you who are interested in Canva, my graphic designer, Krista, will be running that webinar. And you'll be able to ask questions, and she's amazing. So if Canva is something you want to dig a little deeper into, I believe it's August 3rd, 12:10 to 1 p.m. And like I said, my slide deck will have the link for signing up for that free webinar at the back. But Julia, I see you got a question. If you want to unmute, feel free to jump in.
Oh, actually, it was just a thank you so much. I'm unafraid to speak at
Sure.
anything and to anyone. So I wanted to let you know and verbalize and articulate. I wanted to say thank you. And you've given me a reason to go back to Asheville. I love Asheville. Old
Oh,
European
I'm so
Bakery
glad.
is my spot.
Yes, an old Europe. So when was the last time you were here?
Ooh, I just moved out here to Durham, but I used to live in Charlotte and I used to go up there for just a breather. So I would
Yeah.
say, I'm going to say, last March.
All right. So I'm just gonna tell you, they moved into a beautiful new space. So when you get back to
Mhm.
old Europe, let me just tell you, it's like incredible what they just did. Yeah, they moved across the street, and they
Oh,
redid the
wait.
entire
So they're
space.
not on the same side as the chocolatier anymore. They moved over to where the hotel side is.
Yes, yes. There was an empty building there, so they
Yep,
renovated the whole building. It is like magical.
it
I was
is.
just in there. It's like really magical. So yeah, I'm a big fan of them. I go there all the time, but like
Yes.
they did a
Next
beautiful,
time you
it's
eat a
so elegant.
Bavarian, think of me.
Yeah.
Safe travels
Thanks
if
so
you all have a
much.
good one.
All right. Have a great day. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I will go ahead and close this out for the day. But again,